Well, good afternoon. It's almost 4 p.m. I'm walking from Ista all the way to Carrión de los Condes, but I decided to stop here in Vilalcazar. Is that correct? I don't remember the name of the town. I'm sorry. There are all these little pueblos on the mesetas. I think it's Vilalcazar. And anyways, I'll put otherwise a text with a correction. I just want to tell you a beautiful story, you know, like again, the Camino really provides when you need something. And in this case, all I was looking was just to take a break. So I was feeling a bit tired, had a long day yesterday. And so I was just looking for a place to sit, and I entered this town and I said, I'm going to sit somewhere. But there were a lot of benches by the road, but I just saw the church and I thought I'm gonna sit next to the church. Maybe the church is even open, I can visit that. So I walk all the way to the church just to find out that the church is closed. And so I just dropped my backpack there and I decided, okay, you know what, I'm just going to sit on the grass and that's it. Good place to rest. However, not even 5 minutes after I sat, I hear the voice of a man just living in front of the church in his house. His name is Gerardo, and he just invited me, come in, do you want a coffee? Do you want a tea, something? And I thought, whoa, I would really need a coffee now. I mean, I really need some energy. So just go in. And we start talking and I found out, I spent there 1 hour and a half. He offered me like a cake, you know, coffee, milk, everything. And he tells me a little bit about his story. And he's a retired architect, lives there with his wife, has lived in different places around the world. He's from Barcelona, but he also lived in New York and in other places around the US, working as an architect while his wife works as a professor. And now they live in this small little town, right? And he said, well, I saw you out there. I thought, I'm gonna call you in because there's just a few ladies, old ladies living in this town, in this pueblo, and they might get worried if they see a foreigner or a stranger getting into the church, you know, maybe doing vandalism or whatever. So I'll call you in and then if there's time, I can show you the church. And he told me, unfortunately, it's not open now because they're doing some restoration work, but I can get you in later if the workers come back and open the church. So as we talk, you know, we talk really a lot about a lot of things in life. And it's one of those moments where there's an exchange, you know, on the Camino. Because for the people that live on the Camino, we provide them also with something. We provide them maybe with some knowledge, maybe with some information, maybe with just a little bit of time, a connection with the world, an international aspect that you wouldn't have in a small village like this. But because you're in the Camino, you are connected to the world. And also he provided me with some insights, with a lesson on history and architecture and art. And a lot of, you know, some food also. So, you know, it was just a beautiful exchange. When you walk on the Camino, there are different characters that play in this small game of life that is the Camino. The character that everybody knows is the pilgrim that is walking. And he's seeing new places and he's meeting other people. But there are also some other characters on the stage, the hospitalero. And I played this character while I was in Gragnon, right, for that week. And I told you some stories about that. But there's also another character, which are the people who live alongside the Camino. Some of them might have walked the Camino, and some might have played the character of pilgrim. Others, they just live on the Camino, and that's what they do, like Gerardo. And he told me the story of the church, and he said, oh, you came to see our beautiful church in this town, the most beautiful. Yeah, it's the only church, as he was joking, right? It's the only church in this town, but it is beautiful. It's dedicated to Saint Martin de Tours, popular saint in France and also here in this part of Spain. A saint who used to be a Roman soldier who one day met a beggar on the street. It was very cold, and the beggar had barely any decent clothes on, so he gave him half of his own cape to the beggar, and then at night he dreamt of having met Jesus rather than the beggar, and then he converted, and he's regarded as the person who, the starter or the father of the monasteries, even though he was doing this way before the monasteries existed, but a place of shelter, a place of worship, where people can receive help. That was his idea. And But it's not the only thing, you know. We saw the beautiful altar together. We saw some things like there's a signature on the altar which dates, I think, 1594 or something like that. So, you know, almost 500 years old, of one of the authors of the altar. And it's a little detail, you know, that he showed me there. He told me about the representation of the altar, where you can see, of course, some very interesting aspects, because you will see, of course, the saint to whom the altar and the church are dedicated, which is Saint Martin of Tours. But you will also see Jesus, and a little bit more over the top, God. And one interesting thing he told me is that usually you see the representation of God in a painting, right? Michelangelo and with God and Adam touching their fingers, but usually you don't see that a lot in sculpture. And he thought it was quite innovative and radical to represent it in a sculpture, and it was so, in fact, because it wasn't very common. In this sculpture, God is represented with on 3 fingers indicating the Holy Trinity, and one hand on a globe which represents the Word, and is inside a triangle, which again is a symbol of the Holy Trinity. And he stands above Jesus, his own son. But the very interesting thing is also that this representation on a sculpture was rather unique, and he said might have probably come from one of those people who were converted, because Spain has always been a melting pot. We had, or they had, you know, like people from the Roman Empire, Celtic tribes, Arabs, Jewish, you know, the Moors. So all these melting pots of people as characterized, and it's in the blood of the Spanish people nowadays, that are a mix. And inside this, he said probably the person who created this culture was maybe converted from being previously Jewish, forcefully converted, we have to say. That was the only way they could stay there. But so in order to show even more that he was Christian, he decided to do this unusual representation. Overall, you know, I really discovered a lot of beautiful things. We talked about Renaissance art. We talked about, what do you think is Renaissance? It felt like I was back at the high school, you know, with my professor of art. He was telling me, tell me what is Renaissance in one word. And I thought, I don't know, the human is at the center. And he said, no, in one word. And I'm like, human beings, no. And then I said, look at this. And then he showed me this small statue. And what do you think? What do you see there? You know, and I saw movement, you know, because when you see the art from the Middle Ages, it's very static. These figures, they are looking at you from one perspective. When we look at the Mona Lisa from Leonardo da Vinci, we see movement in her smile, and everybody is like amazed by that. And we started talking about Leonardo da Vinci, and one of the paintings by his master, Verrocchio, where Leonardo da Vinci played a small part. But then when Verrocchio saw that small part in the baptism of Jesus, he said, you, Leonardo, are the painter. Because he already noticed like how the attention of everybody who was looking at the painting was going into that left corner towards those 2 figures that are looking at each other, and they have that sense of movement in their face. But then the most interesting part was the roof here, which is an example of the Mudéjar art. Mudéjar is a word that sounds Arab, and it's in fact a type of art that you can find inspired to Spain, and is heavily influenced by Arabs, right? We know that there was a Moorish presence here, and we see that, and I even saw it myself, even though I'm not an expert there, on the geometric pattern, you know, of this dome there. We have an hexagon, we have an octagon, you know, we have like triangles, all repeated in a pattern, almost as an algorithm that repeats certain instructions. And at the very center, there's this octagon, and at the very center of the octagon, there's a tiny dot, which is a circular symbol, which is God. So very, very interesting mix here. And then we might expect, you know, that maybe some of these architects, they were even Moorish maybe before, you know, or they worked on those kind of structures or those kind of temples like a mosque, and they brought that kind of knowledge, because that's the way they used to represent art. In summary, you know, I think behind every moment on the Camino there can be a little surprise, and every encounter can be unexpected, you know. So again, my invitation for you is to just do not rush to the Camino, because literally this church is just 100 meters from the Camino, but most of the people, they always think about the destination. Oh, I need to go to Carrión de los Condes, probably the destination was for me, probably today. But by thinking a lot about the destination, they don't enjoy the journey, which is all about this. It's all about this journey. It's all about talking to the people in this case, or making these small discoveries, or having a moment for yourself. So really stop thinking about the destination of the day, because you will find a place to be, you will find a place to sleep. Don't worry about that, and just take a step back and enjoy the moment. I hope this lesson will help you, and again, I'm going back on the Camino. Maybe there will be more surprises for today that I cannot know. But until then, buen camino, and thank you.